Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. Today's video is going to be another book video for you. I thought we could talk about some of my favorite characters in books. And I have quite an eclectic taste when it comes to characters. And I think that some of the books that I'm going to show you and talk about, you A, have never heard of, and B, you will also not like the characters because I tend to like a character that isn't very likable. I like characters that are very flawed, that know they are flawed, and sometimes they get away with those flaws and sometimes they don't. But I really like characters that aren't perfect, which is why I don't really like reading a lot of contemporary or a lot of like standard like YA fiction, because a lot of the characterization is very sort of bland. It all fits into a nice little box, and I like characters that are a little bit more interesting, that have more depth to them. And so I also, for a very long time, used to read lots of books that really like dove into people's stories more. I'm a little bit off that path right now because I feel I've had my share. But the first book that I'd like to talk to you about, and the first character, definitely fits into that category. This is A.M. Homes' This Book Will Save Your Life. The main character in this book is called Richard Novak, and that is also the character I would like to talk to you about. If you haven't heard of this book, this was, probably still is, I'm not sure, I read this 10 years ago. And this book had such an impact on me that I've been dubbing this my favorite all-time book for a long time. So I hope the camera angle is a little bit the same. My camera cut out, so I had to go out and recharge my battery for a minute. So I was talking about this book, and I was about to tell you about the character in this book. So Richard Novak starts off being a bit of a narcissist, really. He's not a nice person. He has no friends. He's divorced from his wife. She lives in New York. He lives on the West Coast in LA. Huge mansion. And the only people he really sees are his personal trainer and his dietist. And that's pretty much it. And then he like makes little steps throughout his journey, really, in this story that allow him to develop himself as a person. Because that's really what he's searching for, how he can be a better person. And he finds that it lies in connecting with other people. And it's really about him connecting with these other people. And sometimes also a little bit hilariously so. I remember there's a scene in here where he decides to go into like some sort of like rehab detox kind of center. And he like describes his experiences there, as well as like the other people that are in his group. And yeah, so this is a great read if you would like to see how a character can like sort of like fall and then try and climb back up and change who he is. So in terms of characterization, this is definitely a very strong one. Now, the complete opposite probably is what happens to the main character in this book. This is Kill Your Friends by John Niven, and John Niven is an author. I've read 2 of his books, including this one. And this is quite hilarious, but it has a lot of dark humor. It's called Kill Your Friends because people get killed and people get away with it. These are not nice people, especially the main character in this book called Stephen Stelfox. He is a music producer in the early 90s, and he is just not a very nice person. And as, you know, where Richard Novak has something happen to him in the other book that sort of changes his perspective on life, there happens something to the character in this book, and it just really doesn't really change his perspective on life. So if you like reading from a character that, you know, it doesn't have like the best arc in terms of development, but that's kind of like the point of the book, I find. It's just really hilarious. This guy is such a just like know-it-all, and he just calls things as it is, and if you're in a bit of a laugh, then this is a great one. Now, I also wanted to make sure I included some female characters in this list, because of course, sometimes female characters can be a bit, especially in fantasy books. But I find that Irene, the main character in the Invisible Library series by Genevieve Cogman, is just a kick-ass woman. She knows her stuff, even though she's like sort of like just gone past apprenticeship with her job working for this invisible library. But she kind of like knows what she wants. She isn't overly romantic or sappy. She like, you know, gets things done. and she is just a really great character to read about in this series. Each book, she also develops herself a little bit more. There's definitely some mystery in her past that, even though I've now read the first 3 books, that mystery hasn't been resolved yet. Something to do with her parents. She seems to be like an only child, and there's definitely something in her past that has made her the way she has become, but that's like still like a mystery at this point. So it's quite kind of suspenseful, and especially in the first book, the idea of this library has to set up more. So I feel that now the series is continuing, the characters get a little bit more time to be developed a bit more thoroughly, and I really like how Irene is being developed. So that is The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman. Another series that I think has a kick-ass female cast is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I definitely think that Selena, who is the main character, is an absolute kick-ass character for like the first 3 books or so, but there are other characters introduced in the series as time progresses that I actually started rooting for more so than the main character, Selena. So even though she has her quest and she has her things that she wants to do, she becomes a bit insufferable after a while, I find. She's a bit, I don't know, she thinks she knows everything already, and after like 4 books or so, I'm like, yeah, we get the point. I can't remember her name at the moment, but there's this girl who has like a crippled foot and she's been like locked up and like held captive for a while. Elena, something like that, I don't know. But she ends up being a very strong character, I find, in the 5th book in this series, which I really enjoyed. And I also really enjoy the witches in this story. There is this one particular witch that is focused on, which is Manon, and oh my god, I love Manon. So in this series, it's not really the main character that I like as much, but definitely the side cast is one that I really, really enjoy. So the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas, I think, has some great characters. Now, the next book, I actually have to like show you 2 because they kind of fall into the same vein. This is the 2nd book in the Frey and McGray series by Oscar de Muriel, which is a like mystery detective novel set in Victorian Edinburgh, and this is The Street Philosopher by Matthew Plempin, and this is set in 19th century Manchester, I think? Yeah, Manchester. I was right, it's been a while since I read this. And both of these books have sort of like a main character who comes to this either Edinburgh or Manchester city that doesn't really, well, they're kind of like new at this job. They are like the rookie, and they both meet like their teachers, their buddies, their partners in crimes, whatever you want to call them. And especially those partners in crimes in these novels are incredibly witty and just incredibly fun. I feel that, to me, both of these characters in hindsight kind of feel the same way. This is the one I've read most recently, so I can tell you more about it. In this book, I've even forgotten the name of the character, but I just remember really liking the banter between those 2 characters and sort of how this guy is always telling the other guy like, oh, you're such a wuss, really. So I like that one. In the Freya McGray series, in this series, Freya McGray, it's McGray who is like the crazy guy who's telling Frey all the time, like, dude, you're just silly, you're just a know-it-all, you know? So I really like the banter between the 2, and in this case, because it's set in Edinburgh, McGray is a Scotsman as well, so it's kind of been written to like imagine this like Scottish accent, and then you get a bunch of insults. I just really like characters like that. And then last but not least, this is a bit of an honorable mention as well, because I'm not a huge fan of this series by Cassandra Clare. This is the Dark Artifices series, and this is the first book, Lady Midnight, and there's one character in this series that just pulls at my heartstrings, and it's Mark Blackthorne. The only reason why I want to finish this series, despite the fact that I didn't really enjoy the 2nd book or this first book in the series, is Mark. I mean, Mark Blackthorne, if you don't know the story, he is part Fae, part Shadowhunter, and he's been on the wild hunt for a long time, and he's then like rescued out of it and whatever. But he has all these issues. He is bisexual. He is very much torn between his Fae heritage and being a shadow hunter. And I just really, really like him as a character. And I would very much like to see more of Mark Blackthorne also in this last book. So it's coming out, I think, before the end of the year. I think December, the third book in this series has to come out. And I'm definitely just waiting to see what will happen to Mark and all his feelings, because I just have a soft spot for the guy. I don't know why. So those are some of my favorite characters from books that I've read, and I would very much like to know which characters you really enjoy in your reading. And if you really like this video, then I would very much appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe, because I make new videos every single Thursday and Sunday. And without further ado, all that rests me is to wish you a great day, and I really hope to see you in my next video. Bye!